Well, the British gas price rise has probably stiffened the resolve of a group of MPs from all political parties who have been pressing the government to deliver on its manifesto promise to cap energy prices. Earlier, I spoke to the Conservative MP John Penrose. He's been calling for an energy price cap for ages now. I asked him what he's planning to do.
We're trying to get the government and particularly actually the regulator Ofgem to deliver on something which was in the Conservative manifesto and the Labour manifesto and the SNP manifesto, all said that there should be an energy price cap, and so we think it's about time that the regulator got on and did it.
You say that the regulator should get on and do it. Why won't the government get on and do it? They've told us they're not ruling anything out, but there doesn't seem to be much appetite for it.
Well, in fact, the regulator has confirmed to me fairly recently in a letter that they have the necessary legal powers to impose it. In fact, they've already imposed a price cap elsewhere for prepayment meters a little while ago. So it isn't a question of having to legislate. The government doesn't have to bring forward new powers for the regulator to get this done. They've got the powers they need. So there's no point in re-legislating.
So why was it in the manifesto then?
Well, I'm not sure everybody was quite clear that they did have the powers. And actually, from the consumer's point of view, this is great news because it means you don't have to take legislation through Parliament. If the powers are already there, then you can get on with it much faster. And from a consumer's point of view, that's helpful.
How much support do you have among MPs?
Well, it's early days at the moment. We have started signing people up. We've got some quite senior people who've already decided to commit, and we're hoping to collect more over the summer. But to give you an example, Caroline Flint, former Labour energy spokesman, energy minister under the last Labour government, has signed it. We've also got Ian Duncan-Smith from the Conservatives. We've got Sarah Wollaston, who's the chairman of the Health Select Committee. We've got Neil Parish, who's the chairman of the DEFRA Select Committee. So some pretty senior backbenchers, and we're hoping to add to their numbers steadily over the course of the summer, ready for when everyone comes back and Parliament reconvenes in the autumn.
But rather than writing to the Prime Minister about it, you're going to be writing to Ofgem about it.
This is an exercise in trying to ratchet up the pressure on Ofgem, and if we can do that via the government and directly at Ofgem, I don't think we should be too choosy about which avenues we choose. We've just got to make sure that the message gets across loud and clear, and if we can make it clear that there is this cross-party consensus, then that not only makes it easier for the government to say to Ofgem, come on, let's get on with it, but also it makes it harder for Ofgem to ignore.
The problem with trying to influence what the energy companies do is that they're always one step ahead, aren't they? And that's what Ofgem keeps finding out. Ofgem forced them to limit the number of tariffs that they have. And then they came up with this really clever way where the standard variable tariff that most people are on is the most expensive one. And then there are perhaps a handful of really good deals. So when you try to bear down on them, it doesn't seem to work. Ian Conn, the chief executive of Centrica, the company that owns British Gas, told the Today programme this week that they think now they might just get rid of their standard variable tariffs. Here he is.
We're actually proposing that the government are even bolder, and instead of capping the standard variable tariff, they should reform it so that it's removed altogether, so that contracts that don't have any end are actually phased out, and that the level playing field is created so that all suppliers pay the government's costs. Currently, only the large suppliers pay these, and we don't think that's good for the market.
Ian Conn, the chief executive of Centrica, I mean, it almost beggars belief, that, doesn't it? Where he's suggesting that the government should stop them doing something they're all doing.
Well, I mean, in one respect, at least, I think Ian's really is starting to get it, though, because what he's saying is that these contracts where they just sneakily put you onto the default tariff, which also happens to be much more expensive than the one you were on before when your previous deal comes to an end, that's the sort of the moral shortfall in the middle of this. That's the source of the rip-off of you and I and your listeners.
But I mean, if he knows that, why does he need the government to stop him doing it?
I don't think he does. He might need the government to help out with some of the other stuff that he's talking about, but I saw this when I heard his comments. I've spoken to him about it as well, as the first crack in the dam of the Big Six. They're starting to get it, but I was really, really pleased that at least somebody out there in amongst the Big Six is starting to understand why their customers are so hacked off.
It's a little bit David and Goliath, though, isn't it, when you look at the resources that Centrica, the owners of British Gas, will have to draw on, and the number of people working at the regulator, Ofgem.
You're absolutely right, but that's why the regulators exist in the first place. They have enough people, they've got enough lawyers and that sort of stuff, because they've got these legal powers. They are the ones with the big stick, and they can order the Big Six around. So that's what we pay them to do, is to be David to Goliath, and let's not forget how that particular fight turned out.
British Gas have said they will exempt vulnerable customers from this latest price rise, and Ofgem told us they're considering ways to protect all vulnerable customers, including putting them on what they're calling a new safeguard tariff. What do you think of that?
There are 17 million households on this rip-off default tariff.
You could just change the name of it, couldn't you? Instead of call it standard variable, call it rip-off tariff, most expensive tariff.
That's what I routinely call it, and I quite agree with you. It's absolutely the right. Let's call a spade a spade. But your listeners, most of us, will be on this tariff if we haven't done anything to change. And what they're talking about at the moment with this set of new proposals is only going to cover about 2 million out of those 17. We can't leave 15 million households. That's a big chunk of the entire population of the UK at the mercy of the big six. We need to get some protection in place while we fix the rest of the market.
The Conservative MP John Penrose speaking to me earlier today. Well, it might be